It's Doc and Ellie. It's Doc and Ellie. And it's Doc and Ellie.
Greetings, I'm Doc Granger. Welcome to Doc and Ellie's Pubcast, episode number 2. We're coming to you from my hometown, Thomaston, Georgia. It's about 60 miles south of Atlanta, but a good step closer to heaven. Around here, heaven shows up in the shade of pecan trees, the laughter on the porch, and the way neighbors wave whether they know your name or not. It's how we're raised. And like everywhere else, we grow up with dreams bigger than our town. We learn, we build skills, we sit for job interviews. Sometimes we move on to see the world. But no matter where we go, Thomaston has a way of coming along with us. And then when Mama calls, we come back home to stay. I've had a lot of job interviews in my career, mostly because word spreads when you're doing something new and exciting and delivering what you promise. But I didn't interview to be selected. I did interviews so I could do the selecting. I wanted to decide with whom I wanted to work. Those 12, 18, 24 hours a day, because that's what I end up doing. The hiring side thinks they're doing the interviewing. What I've learned is you never really know what people are looking for in a prospective employer. I was looking to be challenged, to learn how to keep learning. Years back, I was called up to New York City for what I thought was the final sit-down with one of the big broadcast companies. I'd already been through the works. You know the drill. Long talks with HR, even an extended phone interview with a clinical psychologist. At that point, I figured they knew everything they needed. My radio days in Atlanta and Detroit, Miami, Fort Lauderdale, around the country, helping radio stations grow into major players. It was my turn to flip the room and find out about them. It was my turn to learn about them. Did I want to work with them? Did they present the challenges I was looking for? When I walked into that room, there were 4 of them: big-time management, HR, marketing, and that same psychologist from the phone call. They shuffled my resume like it was worn thin, so I braced for questions about the big stories, being introduced on stage with the Beatles at their only Atlanta concert, my time with Dr. Martin Luther King, my sparring partner, the good old boy, Governor Lester Maddox, or some of the early marketing successes that turned radio stations around and introduced the coming rock stars to the world. Not rocket science, just a bunch of fun. Instead, it came down to one question. The honcho leaned in and asked me, "What's your most memorable experience of growing up in a small cotton mill town in the Deep South?" I got the distinct feeling that his experiences about the Deep South were nothing more than passing through with family on their way to a Florida vacation or flying over en route to getting a tote bag at a Miami Beach convention. The closest he had been to cotton was mixed with polyester. No matter to me, I learn from everyone. I enjoy sharing with others what I've learned in my life and travels. Now, they probably expected something polished in my answer. Remember, as they saw it, my immediate career future was in their hands. So you would be expected to be what you think they wanted you to be, to tick the boxes. But old Doc always serves up the truth and tells it as I know it. Remember, I was interviewing them. I spent a lot of my summer days as a preteen on my Uncle Luther Russell's chicken farm on Jeff Davis Road with my cousin Sheila. Mother and Daddy were up in Atlanta an awful lot with doctors who were treating my sister, who was born with a heart defect that took her away from us at age 13. Cousin Sheila and I were too young to work the hard stuff on the farm, but we weren't too young to be real curious about everything that surrounded us. The endless rhythm of clucking hens, the mystery of where eggs came from. I remember those dusty tractors that looked like giants asleep out in the field. And the careful way grown-ups moved through chores as if each step carried its own lesson. Sheila and I poked our noses into feed sacks, wondering how ground corn and pellets could build feathers and bone. We asked questions about why chickens roosted high at night, why they scratched the dirt as though searching for treasure, why the air smelled so different inside the chicken house than it did out in the pasture. Even the ordinary fascinated us. The daily gathering of eggs seemed like magic, as if the farm were a treasure chest that never really ran empty. She and I whispered and laughed about our own theories. Maybe the hens whispered secrets to each other in the dark that made the eggs appear for us to find the next morning. What the grown-ups saw as routine, we treated as wonder. For us, those summer days weren't about chores or labor. They were about discovery, a child's first steps into understanding how life really works when the sun rises on a farm. But let's not stray. The question from the honcho was, what's your most memorable experience of growing up in a small cotton mill town in the South? Well, here was my answer. I told them about the morning Aunt Ruth asked me to check the mailbox. I was barefoot, just finished a breakfast of buttered biscuits drenched in Cairo syrup, the dirt cool under my feet. By the time I reached the end of the driveway, the summer air was already heavy. I pivoted toward the mailbox and the coolness turned squishy. Then it turned hot. I had stepped straight into a fresh pile of chicken manure, barefoot, between the toes. And that, I reported to the suits, was my most memorable experience of growing up in the Deep South. The room went silent. All I heard was car engines and horns blowing down on Avenue of the Americas and the busy streets of New York. Then the words came, would you please wait outside in the hall, Mr. Granger? I toted my bag outside and stood there like a little schoolboy who had been sent out for smart-mouthing the teacher. A few minutes later, the HR lady, who looked just like Jane Hathaway from the Beverly Hillbillies, same hair, same polite stiffness, cracked the door, smiled like she was rescuing me from detention, and said, all right, you can come back in now. And here's the twist. I got the job, and I accepted. Why? Because I found them to be stuffy, but truthful. Turns out the truth, even when it's stuffy, sticks and reaches right here.
And that's exactly what we do here on the Pubcast. We tell the truth, unpolished and unvarnished. The stories that don't always shine on a resume may be the ones that remind us where we came from, because honesty, whether it's funny, awkward, a little earthy, has a way of cutting through the noise. Today, we're digging into a truth that matters deeply to this community. What happens when an outside company tries to reshape the future of a small town? It's not just about promises of jobs or shiny headlines. It's about land, water, and air, and the people who call this place home.
And that brings us to our guest. He's a man who knows chickens a whole lot better than I do, and also knows the weight of leadership in this county. Rusty Blackston is a lifelong Upson County farmer. For 4 decades, he's raised chickens. He's also served as chairman of the Board of Commissioners. Rusty's been outspoken, firm and steady in his opposition to the Brightmark plastics plant being pitched for Thomaston. He joins us today not just as a farmer, not just as a former commissioner, but as a neighbor who's seen firsthand what decisions like this can mean for our community.
Rusty, welcome to the Pubcast. We're so glad to have you here. Let's start with the question everybody wants answered. What first made you so strongly opposed to the Brightmark project, and why do you believe it's the wrong direction for Thomaston?
The latter part of April in 2024, I was shocked when the announcement for Brightmark coming to Upson County was made. It concerned me, and the more I looked into it, it was more of a family issue, a personal issue, and environmental. Now, I'm not what you'd call an environmentalist. I'm more of a conservationist. That being said, I farm for a living. I've learned if we don't take care of our land and our environment, it's not going to take care of us. And this project that's been announced is not good for Upson County with the problems it could create. We've had our family farm for over 70 years now. My son lives there with me. My grandson lives there also. And I'm fixing to be a great-grandfather at any second right now. So I want to preserve our rural Upson County. I want to preserve our quality of life to ensure that next generation coming along will be able to enjoy it here in Upson County.
Thanks for being with us, Rusty. In today's battle in Upson County, the debate swirls around the right direction versus wrong direction. 98.5% of the hundreds of people who voluntarily stepped up at the petition table at the Greatest Generation Park's Independence Day celebration voted in opposition to the Brightmark project. July 4th was the first opportunity the public had to voice its opinion. Up to that point, it was all pom-pom waving by the old media in town, and they're still up to it. Every week looked and felt like a homecoming day celebration. In Upson County, the stakes have shifted. Suddenly, the old one-mule town has a new voice, and we're honored to have Rusty as our guest at this critical time in our town's history. It's about who gets to define the future. A $1 billion plastics to fuel project by Brightmark has ignited public debate. The town is suddenly awake. Neighbors, veterans, former mill workers, business owners, farmers have banded together under the banner of the Upson Environmental and Government Transparency Group. Can you tell us a little about that, Rusty?
Well, Doc, after the announcement was made, we consulted a law firm, and we had to file and become a corporation for them to represent us. There's quite a number of people that have been very helpful. Ms. Tammy Boyle, Mike Greenman, the Sierra Club, Flint River Keepers. A lot of these organizations are working with us. And the reason we formed this corporation is to try to inform the public. So many people just see the signs and they say, what is Brightmark? We want to get this information, this message out there where people can make a clear choice of their own instead of being sold the pom-poms, lollipops campaign.
And that group is turning kitchen halls into meetings. They're using social media threads to challenge boardroom presentations, and they're asking the county, was this deal spelled out clearly? Did we have the information needed to fully understand the risk? Did we even have a voice? Whose press release is writing this story? To help unpack how we got here and what we feel might come next, we're honored to have you, Rusty. Our time with you will cut through the noise, laying out who, what, where, when, and how of this proposed plastics plant, and the next one, because they'll keep coming. Towns like ours are the cheap dates of corporate America, easy targets for big outfits looking to build what their own neighborhoods will not permit. For those who don't know who Brightmark is, let's talk a little bit more. How would you describe the company to local citizens and also the region? Because the concern about Brightmark goes beyond the county line of Upson. People are just hearing the name through the headlines. What is Brightmark's track record?
Well, Brightmark is an energy-based company out of California. They have a number of subsidiary companies like Brightmark, Indiana, and the one they're proposing, Brightmark Circulatory, Thomaston. They're into gas and fuels, things of that nature. They want to set up the recycling facility here in Upson County. And as you said, this will be not only affecting us, but it's a regional problem. We've addressed Lamar County, and I have addressed the Barnesville City Council, and they were shocked at the information. So you see, it's not really being publicized as it should. Other areas will be affected, like Lamar County, rail and transport. We don't know which direction, if tanker cars are going to be used on the main highways, which route they will take. I would imagine 36 into Jackson to Interstate 75. So it's more of a broader project than just right here in Upson County.
They called their bankruptcy in Ashley. Ashley is their only other legitimate plant, right? Fully operational. Not
I understand they have other facilities globally.
right.
They have one in Florida, I think, that's doing working with dairy farmers on methane gas. I don't know how that's going. But the only one I'm familiar with that they have here in the United States is in Ashley, Indiana.
Okay. They call their bankruptcy in Indiana strategic. What would that mean to Thomaston if they strategically bankrupted here?
Well, the Industrial Development Authority says that the taxpayers will not be on the hook for any debt or obligation here. And we are not like Ashley, Indiana. I spoke with the director up there of the Development Authority, and his words were, we've got to keep them here. We have invested so much money into this project that we've got to try to keep them afloat. If not, the taxpayers are going to absorb millions of dollars in debts and infrastructures for this project. We have not yet got to that point. It could be down the road, bankruptcy. As far as that strategic move, yes, there are companies that do that. But to me, dealing with a business, I'm old-fashioned, more like a handshake. A man's word means something. If you have a debt, you settle your debt. You work it out. You pay it. Yes, they've done quite well. That's one place they've succeeded. They beat the investors out of $177 million in Ashley, Indiana.
So they wiped out some debt.
They did. They completely, I would estimate they're debt-free at this time. But the problem being, and even with the agreements with the IDA, it says that this company to receive tax abatements, which means the local taxpayers will be absorbing additional taxes they just don't realize to keep the county government going. And there's millions and millions of dollars of real estate out here now in the county that's not being taxed fairly, and I understand that, to keep companies here to provide jobs, to produce a product. But in the agreement with Brightmark, signed by Mr. Chase Fallon, says they must produce a commercial quantity product. And when you pull that up and look at it, that means a product, a sellable product, and a quantity is enough to support the operation of the business. Right now in Indiana, the last numbers are they're only at 5% production. They cannot produce a product to pay their bills in a sellable product. These products have been dropped tremendously. The interest is not there. The sales are not there from what I'm reading. Large oil companies that once backed these type refineries, I call it refinery because you're using heat to melt a product. You're making another product. But they call it plastic to plastic, plastic to fuel. Mm-hmm. These large oil companies backed away from it. Shell, Mobil, Exxon, they're saying it's not profitable. It's not feasible. And if these companies are realizing that now, who's going to invest in such a project here in Upson County? It just behooves me.
Technology is changing so fast. I mean, even when I look back at the numbers, the promises, like the 200 jobs, I think was kind of the baseline, right? And I think that was part of the template for Macon when they were negotiating with the city of Macon. Those numbers and the agreement of those numbers baked in happened in the fall of 2023 and maybe even a little bit earlier. AI, even as we know it today in the fall of 2025, is light years away ahead of where it was in 2023. So they could have, in good conscience, thought that they would need 200 people to run this plant. I don't think they're going to hire one person more than is needed. And with the change with AI and the robotics, even in those 2 years, there's a pretty good chance they don't need 200 people to run the plant. Do you know if those numbers were based on an assumption that robotics are going to become a little more prominent in industry?
Doc, I don't know how they came up with those numbers, but I did see the information submitted to the Georgia Office of Economic Development. And if they broke ground today, 5 years from this date of operation, they will be, in their own admission, employing only 24 employees the first 5 years. Local employment will probably be minimum. These positions will be like plant managers, brewmasters, things of that nature, computer operators. There were 4 positions listed on the information they gave that might be local labor: 2 house cleaners and 2 house-tour drivers.
So are you confident in saying to the public that if the promise of 200 jobs for Thomaston is a primary driver in their minds to be positive about this, that they can take that out of their equation, their thought process?
Don't get me wrong, Upson County, Thomaston does need the jobs. We really do.
We could do better with 224.
Right. But I do not, this is my opinion only. I don't think you will ever see a creation of 200 jobs out of this project.
Looking back on your time as a BOC chairman and service with the IDA, tell me a little bit about what your approach to economic development projects like this one was.
Back at that time when a company was interested in coming to Upson County, we usually got messages from the state economic development saying, Project XYZ would like to locate in Georgia, and they do this, and this is what's required and what they will need to come to your area. And our director would look it over, and they would talk to us about it and want to know our opinion. If the community was, or the board was interested, then we would go back to the state and say, put them in contact with us and let's start talking. That happened back around 2013, and we missed out on one of the greatest companies that could ever come to Upson County.
And that being?
Beretta Firearms. We spent a whole day with them out there at the airport, making offers, showing them the property, whatever we could do. The final question was, I asked them, what can we do to get you to come to Upson County? You tell me the price tag. Nothing was ever done. We offered the same thing they did in Kentucky, only Kentucky offered $1 million cash on the table. They went to Kentucky.
I understand.
But that's the way the normal operating procedure was. I'll bring to light in a little while how this one went down.
You mean you have a secret? You're going to reveal something we don't know?
We'll get into that just a little later.
We'll soon take Doc and Ellie's Pubcast live. What we're doing this morning with Rusty Blackston is being recorded, and it'll go on YouTube in a few hours. But soon we'll have real two-way conversations with the public. Until then, we set up a hotline for your visit here today, and we invited readers and viewers to make comments or ask questions. And here's a question phoned in to the hotline from a Thomaston resident, and his question is about the IDA.
Rusty, do you feel like the IDA has too much power in decision-making without conferring with the council or the public? Thank you.
The IDA is a constitutionally created authority. My understanding is Mr. Ronald Barfield created the first one in the state of Georgia in 1964 for Thomaston, Upson County. The county commissioners nor the city council controls the IDA. They are a separate entity. They have the authority to give tax abatements, work with industries to bring them here. That's why they were created. But I do feel like before any tax abatements are given to any industry, it should be discussed with the governing authorities, the taxing authority of the county commissioners. The IDA wouldn't need to say, we've got the company's name. They wouldn't need to say how many. They could just say, we've got Project XYZ that's going to employ 150 people, and they manufacture clothing. That would be the basic information needed to be supplied to the commission board to say, well, yeah, we think that's good, so let's give them the tax abatement. Your commission board is the one that sets your digest, sets the budget. Well, your tax commissioner sets a digest, but the commissioners have to budget every year for the operation of the county. And in so doing, these industries that are already existing here pay taxes just like regular citizens do. But if a new industry comes in, and I see the trade-off, jobs for taxation, but there are millions and millions and millions of dollars of real estate here in Upson County that's not being taxed fairly at this time due to tax abatements. That when budget time comes, Doc, you and I are picking up the shortfall, and millage rates rise. We're paying more taxes than industries are. And to me, they should have to get approval. I've been speaking with our local legislatures. I hope something will be done in the next year or so to bring this to light to where there will be some kind of ruling that IDAs will have to get permission from the taxing authority to give abatements. But until that time, they're still free to run.
So you're saying the path of responsibility should flow back to the elected officials. The IDA board members are selected, not elected?
Well, in the charter, the chairman of the Board of Commissioners, when he goes into office, and the mayor of the city of Thomaston automatically are two board members. The other four members, two are selected and appointed from the county citizens, two are elected and appointed from the city citizens to be representatives. So we have 66% of the board that's not elected making decisions to give away your tax dollars, and they're not elected.
We're going to turn the page on who and go right into what. Brightmark markets itself as a leader in advanced recycling. What is your understanding of what they actually do?
We've been told two or three different things. They are a plastic recycler. That's true and correct. When they first approached Upson County, and I was in the city council meeting that night, a gentleman from the company came in, and, you know, the pom-pom hurrahs. Mm-hmm. And he said they were going to take, and he picked up a plastic bottle, his water bottle. He said, we're going to take water bottles. We're going to take car seats. We're going to take dashes out of cars. All these products that other companies won't recycle, we're going to use those, and that's what we're going to save the world with. Well, they have since changed their story. Now they said they're only going to use plastic film. I assume they mean the plastic like they wrap pallets with, the boat wrap, the wrappings you see on these big, expensive boats going down the interstate, the blue and white plastics. But it's hard for me to fathom where they're going to get 400,000 tons of that type plastic a year. Right now in Indiana, they are recycling different types of plastics. They have had problems. They have had production problems. They've had financial problems. And I just can't understand why the Industrial Development Authority wants to bring in someone that's already got a bad history of problems financially, production-wise, employment-wise. The employees in Indiana won't even speak to you now. They would talk to start with, but now they're under a non-disclosure act. They can't even discuss the company. So what's Brightmark hiding? They first in the city council meeting that night, and I wish the city council would record their meetings because we don't have any proof, but I was there. Councilman Greathouse said, well, I've been in public service all my life, public safety. I'm concerned about what some of the mishaps have been. What are the dangers? You know, the standard answers. Have you had any fires? We've had 5 or 6, and they were on the hosters of lithium batteries. Well, in research later on, we pull up, and we find a TV station article out of Indiana, WANE. You can research it yourself. We have pictures on our website showing a major fire there at the plant facility. But it seems our EMA director spoke with the fire department there last week or so ago when they made a tour, and they said they had not responded to any fires at that facility that had not already been extinguished when they got there. Look it up online. Look at the number of departments, the people, the time, and the volume of that fire. Somebody's misleading somebody somewhere because pictures just don't lie.
So what due diligence should have been done to verify their claims?
I think they should have investigated this company more. I think what the IDA was seeing was jobs and tax dollars. I would have wanted to know more about the company, their past histories, their accidents. I would want to know about their finances. I would want to know about their production. I would want to know about their safety records. And I think this was a Hail Mary pass right there before election time to bring somebody in.
So this was timed leading up to an election?
Yes, sir, it was.
Here's a question that keeps popping up on my email. How do you get to be a designated influencer for a project like this? I'm pleased to see local residents take their time for a tour of the Brightmark plant. But were there environmentalists there? Were there scientists? Were there medical people? Were there researchers? In the pictures I saw, I didn't see news reporters. What I saw was people holding tote bags like they just finished a 2-day motivational conference. How do you become an influencer?
That's a good question, Doc. I've had many conversations with a very good friend of mine now. His name is Corey Kistler. He was an employee and a supervisor at the facility when they had some major accidents. He's no longer employed, and he can't talk a whole lot because of a lawsuit that he has pending at this time. But he did tell us, he said, look, you just don't realize the trouble we would go through when the governor would want to come tour the facility, when a state representative wanted to come tour, when even your people wanted to come tour. He said we would practice for 3 to 4 weeks, every turn, every step, what's to be seen, what is not to be seen. He said they're dark secrets. He said, but the company made sure those were never seen. It was all designed for show and glow. He said, it's a selling point. So as far as our representatives going up, sure, we have some qualified people. But like you said, do we have any chemists? Do we have any scientists? We have them on our law team now. Mm-hmm. And they have taken the information that Brightmark has supplied to the EPD here in Georgia and dissected it down and have proven that Brightmark's numbers they're submitting, they cannot stay within that parameters of emissions. They will be anywhere from 3 to 12 times the amount of emissions that the state will allow.
Let's go back to that picture that was printed in the local paper just for a second, because as you know, I'm a returning native to Upson County. You know all those faces. I don't. So are you saying that, as far as you know, in that group, I think there were 17, there were none of these people that we just talked about, scientists, researchers, environmentalists. Did you recognize any professionals that qualify for those categories of people?
Not that I'm familiar with. I mean, we have fire chiefs. We have volunteer fire department chiefs. We have our county EMA director. And they've all had some type training as hazmat material, things of that nature. The sheriff was one. Like he told me, he said, I don't understand what my part would be.
What was his part?
I don't know, unless in case they do have a catastrophe that they would do traffic control, or what would the local sheriff do with a facility like that? But as far as people that's really understanding the process, I don't think we had anybody that would really comprehend what it is.
So then that would lead me to this conclusion, I gather, coupled with the fact that I've been unable to get answers from some of the organizations about this particular question. Our level of preparedness at this point in time is in question. The fire department has not answered that question, though initially they committed to answering it. The hospital will not answer that question. Is it because they don't know at this point, or is it because maybe where we are situated, we are not prepared for the possibility of accidents that can come from a plant like this?
Well, that's a twofold answer. First answer is we are not prepared. A retired captain of the Thomaston Fire Department made the statement, the city of Thomaston and all volunteer fire departments combined could not combat a situation of any major size in a facility like this. Number two, we don't have the training. I say, when I refer to we, I'm talking about the emergency responders. They don't have the training because they've never dealt with anything like this. The fire chief, Alan Yarber, was on the radio this morning saying that, yes, there could be problems. And yes, I'm impressed with what I saw. But yet, we have got to start training. That tells me they don't have a clue of what to do in a situation like this. This is a whole nother ball game from just a structural fire or something like that. So we're not prepared. We don't have the supplies. We don't have the equipment. We don't have the training. And it's an unknown. Every fire is different. So they're going to have to really go to work to be prepared for this coming.
What was your experience with the fire department? You were a fireman, right?
Yes, I worked for the city of Thomaston 7-8 years. I was one of the founders of Rock Hill Fire Department, involved with it for about 25 years. But the fire service has evolved into a whole new method, I reckon you would call it now. The good old days of just putting a house out is gone. Structural fires have so many chemicals, just like in your house, that used to be solid wood are now plastics, different type makeups. There's so many hazards in just a structure fire now in a regular house. So putting that into terms of a recycling facility with all these chemicals, all these plastics, is going to be a whole new school for everybody here.
So it sounds like what you're saying is we have a lot of catching up to do.
I would think so.
You know, we don't need to test every drop of blood in the lab to know if a patient is sick or what the illness is. And the same thing here. At the July 4th crowd, a few hundred neighbors filled out petitions, and we saw the same thing again and again. Almost everyone was worried about this project. If that snapshot holds true, 98.5% of approximately 29,000 people who reside in Upson County, about 28,565 of 29,000 are not happy about Brightmark. Now that leaves 435 people who might be for it. We're not counting heads to win arguments. We're counting stories. We're counting fears and the people who will live here long after those ribbons are cut and the pom-poms are put back for the next job. So we ask you this question. Roughly 435 people are in favor of Brightmark. Does that represent the elite leadership in this town? Because I keep hearing people say, why do they keep electing the same people over and over? Are 435 people making the decisions for 29,000 people in this town? Or is it even fewer people?
It is probably less than 30 to 35 people making the decisions.
Could you write out that list for me? Could you?
Well, let's just say you have 6 or 8 on the county commission board.
Mm-hmm.
You have 6 or 8 on the Industrial Development Authority. You have 6 or 8 on the city council. Then you have the, let's just say we'll call them the other influencers. And that is what's deciding for Upson County. As far as the 400 in favor of, there may be more, I don't know. But just in your poll, we'll use those numbers. We were able to hand them a petition with over 600 signatures just in a short period of time to the Board of Commissioners objecting to this. And the Board of Commissioners do not, like I say, do not control the IDA. But they do have the authority, but they will not talk of creating ordinances to prevent this from happening. 4 of the board members have expressed very grave concerns about this. We've asked them for surety bonds in case they come in and go bankrupt. Who's going to clean it up, Doc? Mm-hmm. The taxpayers will. There just hadn't been any action really taken by the Board of Commissioners, and I'm tired of them hiding behind, we can't. They can, but they just won't.
So we have a group of 30 people who are deciding for 29,000, the existing and the future of this town. Are you saying that if we found the right 30 people, we could turn this town over that quickly? No, surely not. Politics doesn't work that way.
Doc, is not the number of people, and the people that are in position, they do have a concern. It's just, I think the direction as far as the deer in headlights phrase, we see money. The old saying is, follow the money.
The Doc and Ellie hotline is 706-240-4293. You see it up on the screen there, and we invite your participation in this week's program and also next week with Andy Chastain. And here's another question from the hotline, Rusty.
Hey, Doc. This is Bob from Thomaston. My question for Rusty is, do you know when the Georgia EPA will decide on the Brightmark application? And by the way, Doc, thanks for having Mickey Thrasher on last week as your guest. It was very enjoyable.
Okay, Bob. First of all, let's define. The agency here in Georgia is the Environmental Protection Division, state of Georgia. The EPA you referred to, that's the federal level. When the determination will be made, we don't know. The closing period for public comments ended the 1st of this month, and we have requested a public hearing. We don't know if that will be held in Atlanta. We don't know if it'll be held in Thomaston. We don't know if it'll be held at all. But we are watching the website daily, monitoring it to see if any and when a decision will be made. But at this time, we don't know.
So what are the signs? We're turning the page here now to when. What are the signs the public should watch for to indicate which way this thing is going?
The key right now, Doc, is the permit. And the director, when we visited him in Atlanta, said that they probably would get a draft permit, which is the first step working phases of getting the permanent permit. If a final permit is issued, then you can be assured that they will continue to come forward. The next thing will be financing. In a business, they cannot operate without a permit, so until they get a guarantee of a permit, it's going to be hard to get financing, which will be their second hurdle. I don't know what company would want to invest in a company that's had problems financially, production-wise, as this company has, but who knows? Maybe a foreign investor wants to put money into it.
We'll turn the page again. We go to hell, the closed door process. And maybe this is where you rolled that little grenade into the room. How did this project come to be pitched to Thomaston in the first place? And who brought them here?
Well, I have made some misstatements in the past because of what happened when I was on the board, how it operated, that the state would contact you. In a conversation in the last day or so, it comes to find out that that's not the way it happened in Upson County. A company out of Dublin, Georgia, Will Curry Real Estate, they are a real estate marketer that mainly deals in industrial type development. Evidently, they were employed, I assume, by Brightmark to find a location in Georgia. My question is, them being in Dublin, are they the same company that tried to get Brightmark up into Macon Bibb County? Don't know. But it's coincidental they're close together. It seems that there was an email sent to IDA director explaining this company, Project Keeper, whatever they wanted to call it. They would need X, Y, and Z furnished, this amount of water, this amount of electricity, this amount of gas, the infrastructure requirements. And she politely replied back that we are not capable, or this is just not for Upson County, we can't handle it. And thanked them for considering us. She thought that was the end of it. Well, then a little while later, it seems that the chairman of the commission board, Mr. Norman Allen, and the chairman of the Industrial Development Authority, Mr. Steve Rush, made a trip to Dublin, Georgia to meet with Curry Real Estate. How they got the information, I don't know. But they came back from Dublin with a contract for the IDA, and they rubber stamped it, and that was the beginning. So that was I would call a private deal. Of course, they were representing the IDA. Both of them are on the board. But it just did not meet the standard operating procedure of the way things have been done in the past. Of course, always new innovations. Let's try this route. But to me, didn't pass the smell test. I'm sorry.
Is the general public aware of what you just revealed?
No, sir. That's just come out in the last day or so.
What do you think the general public's reaction is going to be when they hear that?
I hope it'll be enough to wake them up to start watching in the future, to take control of the events of their community, to be involved, get out and vote. That's the key thing, vote.
So it's becoming a little clearer to me, I think, why so much of the process was conducted behind closed doors. And that, again, is the number one concern, and I will change that word from concern to complaint, that I hear in my roadside interviews and particularly out on Delray Road, is we were blindsided. We didn't know anything about this, and that's generally followed by And these decisions were made by unelected people. What's the worst that could happen on Delray Road to property values, do you think, if this goes forward?
Property values have already started to drop. I'll give you a prime example. Just a little over a mile away from the building site, a friend of mine has his home, nice log house, 15 acres of land, put up on the market for sale. Another friend of mine looked at it and went straight to the realtor and put down a large deposit for the property. Then when they found out about Brightmark, they withdrew and walked away. Some homes already have not been sold due to the possibility of Brightmark coming. I anticipate if they do, you're going to see land values drop in that area. Homes building has slowed down somewhat in the last month or two in Upson County. Of course, there have been quite a number of new homes built here in the last year. But I don't look for the property values to hold up. And if property values start falling in my area, and when it comes time to set the budget and the digest, taxes are not for my community, they're going to increase in other communities to offset the loss in my area. So this is not just affecting the Rock and the industrial tract. This could be affecting Salem. It could be affecting Thurston. So it's so many numbers and factors that play into such as this.
Is there a flip side to that? Are there any positives you can see from a real estate perspective?
I don't think so. Who would want to live right next door to a facility that's processes what they do, has the possibilities of explosions? The question was asked at a meeting, have they run a blast zone assessment? What that means is if the facility blew up, how bad is it going to be? Well, they haven't. And the reason why the answer was, we don't know what we're going to build yet. Well, if I was asking somebody for $879 million and I was a lender, I'd want to know what color the toilets are in the ladies' restroom. And getting back to the blast zone, we won't go, I don't want to scare people, but it could be effective up to 2-mile radius from the site, which means a lot of our other industries in that area could be totally dissolved, gone.
In my travels, discussions with people about Brightmark, I have run across a few of those 3,000 asthmatics that live in Upson County. That's an estimate from the health department. And it seems to me some of those people have already begun packing their bags to get as far away from that plant as possible.
Doc, you mentioned the people that's packing their bags that has the asthmatic problems. If you stop and look back, at one time Upson County was rated very high in cancer rates. I believe a lot of that was due to the textile mills back in those days, black lung disease, things of that nature. Why do we want to take a chance with a company coming in here that's going to be releasing these chemicals into the air way above exceeding the limits of the state of Georgia that causes these type things? Now, some of the chemicals they're going to release are PM 2.5s, VOCs, benzene, xylene, things of that nature, which are deadly. And we just don't need to expose our community to that. The Indiana Department of Environmental Management is what they call their EPD there in their state. Went to the Brightmark facility and ran some tests. Well, they came back and said, this can't be right. We can't use these numbers. The test results showed that they were emitting 669 particles per million when only allowed 50 parts per million. So they said, oh, something must be wrong with our test equipment. Well, that right there shows you that they're putting out more chemicals into our air than what's allowed. If they get in and get to operating, they can do the same thing here in Upson County. Sure, they may be fined. We'll pay the fine. We'll keep operating. At what point does a dollar sign equate to the quality of life and the health of our community? Explain that.
And your answer to that?
There's none.
Let me ask you this. Could this plant be built in the neighborhoods of any of these people who are orchestrating to bring this plant here? I think they're, from San Francisco?
They are.
Could this plant be built in the city of San Francisco?
I don't think it could be built in California, period.
Do you believe the county can still attract other industries if Brightmark, for some reason, does not move forward?
I do, but the old saying is, if you don't accept this one, we're not going to send you other links to other industries. They will. The first thing they taught us at Georgia in economic development is be selective. Watch what you let come to your community. Do we want to be known as the plastic trash dump of the United States? It would be the largest facility. Or do we want to be known for some other industry that produces a product, safety, environmentally, that would attract other industries? But it's already been stated that there are other, I think Mr. Gully said 11 other interests right now of locating in our industrial park due to Brightmark coming that would be related. So what type of industry will be related to plastic recycling, excuse me.
So the circle's expanded.
It seems like it has. Mm-hmm. We only know what one does. We don't know what the 11 will do.
But saying no to this one simply sets the standards. It does not stop industry. It attracts a different quality, a different type of industry. Correct?
Yes.
You and I caught chickens about the same time. I'm a little bit older than you, but did you actually catch chickens on the Russell farm?
Not on the Russell farm. That
Okay.
was my uncle, but I've caught chickens on my dad's farm.
Okay.
Mr. Buck Williams, Mr. John Daniel, people like that, when we caught them by hand and toted them out in wooden crates.
So is it true that the proper way to catch a chicken is by one leg and not two?
Well, you catch them by one leg, you get 4 in one hand, 4 in another, and you go to the crate with them.
Is it true that folks still quietly speak here about Merrill Greyhouse?
When the subject's brought up, yes.
And I mean that in by the sorrow it brought, not about any of the details or anything of that nature, because I'm not privy to that, other than as we do our own research in preparation for our book that I promised Mama I'd write. Sheriff Greyhouse's name keeps coming up. And it just seems to be one of those things that has stayed with people in this town of a particular age, and it's somewhat of a legacy. Stay with us. I have a couple more questions, and then I'm going to give the floor to you for your closing comments. But first, I'd like to speak my piece from Old Doc. Here's how Old Doc sees it. Kind of like a returning soldier to his hometown after growing up a little on battlefields away in other places. Your perspective on things change. You come home thinking it's going to be exactly the way it was when you left, and I think most returning soldiers will tell you that it's always different. Nothing's forever. We live in a town where folks know a baby's coming before the engagement ring is even out of the jewelry store. Round here, word travels faster than lightning. People stop me at the gas pump. They stop me at Piggly Wiggly, at Ingles, in the produce department, or at the park bench and tell me things that keeps me scratching my head long after the sun goes down. But here's what still surprises me. After a full year of roadside talks and front porch conversations since launching 360 News, which you are now a part of, I still run into people who are hearing the word Brightmark for the first time. How is that possible? In a town where gossip can outrun a thunderstorm, you would think everybody would know everything. Well, maybe it's because folks are busy. They've got lives to live, and they're working and raising families and paying bills, not sitting in on closed-door briefings or industrial pep rallies. Or maybe it's because the story was not meant to be heard until it was too late to do anything about it. As we look back, whether that was planned or not, that's the way it happened. What about those people whose future is being challenged? How about those 3,000 asthmatics we talked about? Or people with other breathing issues? Is protection for their well-being legislated into this deal? The fact that I don't hang out with the boys at City Hall, or that I've asked questions of the hospital and fire department, they keep sidestepping, doesn't mean we're anti-business. We're not. We're pro-truth. What we stand against is keeping people in the dark about issues that could shape this community for decades to come. We don't stir the pot, we turn on the light. If asking questions makes people uncomfortable, maybe those are the questions that we should keep asking and asking more of. I believe in the separation of media and the decision makers, just like I believe in the separation of church and state. When those lines blur, trust fades. Once trust is gone, trust gets mighty hard to find. The media's job isn't to echo press releases or wave pom-poms for whoever's in charge. Our job is to sort the facts from fiction, and when the truth finally stands on its own 2 feet, then we'll celebrate. We'll wave the pom-poms with them. Because celebration without truth is just noise, and this town's had enough noise. What it needs now is light, fairness, little old-fashioned honesty, kind that doesn't hide behind closed doors. So, Rusty, we start, or maybe I should say continue, with this question. If asking questions about public safety, transparency, or environmental impact makes somebody anti-business, then what does that make the ones who keep the public in the dark? The meaning of progress? A lot of people are watching you right now. If you could speak directly to every family in Upson County about this project, Brightmark, what would you say to them?
I would tell them to continue the fight. Continue to be in conversation with your elected officials. And worst of all, if it comes and you're young enough, get out of Upson County.
What lessons should future leaders learn from the way this deal has been handled?
Be open, be transparent, investigate, do their research. Do your research and get your information for yourself to make a determining decision in a situation such as this.
Which you have done for the community, and we thank you very much for being with us. Thank you, Rusty.
Well, in closing, it's just like the great journalist Paul Harvey. Now you know the rest of the story.
The Doc and Ellie Pubcast. The Doc and Ellie Pubcast. The Doc and Ellie Pubcast.